She is a woman, she is autistic, and she doesn't think like the others. At a young age, having the ability to only think in pictures, she was given a beautiful and unique insight into the world of animals. She not only conquered society's limits in her personal life, but also changed the course of the cattle industry forever. Her intelligence, perseverance, and empathy gave her the tools to cope with the insurmountable conflicts in a male-dominated field, and achieve compromise in an otherwise unyielding industry. She is Temple Grandin.
Temple Grandin is a significant leader in the cattle industry due to her outstanding modifications in livestock machinery. Her improvements are caused by her immense disagreement with the way cattle were being treated by ranchers with their violent slaughters and inhumane veterinarian procedures.
Though Temple knew she could never fully stop the slaughtering or mistreatment of cows, she did know that she could be satisfied with a compromise by improving the quality of their lives. Because of Temple's visual thinking and strong connection to animals, she was able to accomplish her goals.
Temple could see and feel the same as the cattle because of her autistic visualizing, claiming that animals saved me, and we've got to give those animals a decent life, and we've got to give them a painless death. We owe the animal respect.
Temple changed multiple feedlot facilities, which range from squeeze chutes, body-grabbing machines that hold the cattle steady for their shots, to dip vats, medicine-filled tubs that the cows would soak in to prevent diseases, so that animals were slaughtered in a benevolent way and were never petrified when being given their medicinal shots.
Temple was born on August 29, 1947, in Boston, Massachusetts. While growing up, Temple suffered from the conflict of having a lack of hearing, short attention span, and difficulty understanding English language and material. Because of this, Temple was taken to a doctor where she was diagnosed with what was then considered a mental illness, which is known today as Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism.
Because of Temple's autism, she possessed a visual thinking mindset, which caused her to think in only videos and pictures. She was unable to think in words or language and had trouble expanding her vocabulary. She was not very fluent with sentences and would often repeat multiple words in just one conversation. Not only that, but Temple was often teased, therefore she sought to animals for comfort.
Temple made her first true connection with animals when she witnessed cattle relaxing as they were being maneuvered into squeeze chutes at her aunt's ranch.
Anxious to discover if the squeeze chute would give her the same feeling, she quickly climbed into it and realized that the pressure also comforted her and helped to calm her nervous system.
Due to Temple's love for the squeeze chute, she constructed her own human squeeze machine during high school at age 18. This piece of machinery was Temple's way to compromise with the internal pain of teasing and autism.
Some of the cattle just kind of relaxed, so I went and tried out the squeeze chute, and the pressure calmed me down. So then I built a squeezing machine that I could get into that worked with an air cylinder and an air compressor where I could work a little control handle and I could squeeze myself, and I used that to calm down.
After Temple received her master's degree, she started working at a feedlot and saw all the awful things cattle were being put through.
Because Temple was so close to the animals, she could feel their pain and see the things they saw through their perspective. And for that reason, Temple sought for a compromise to enrich and advance the cattle's lives for good.
In 1991, Temple officially started her improvements when she was needed in Arizona.
At the time, an Arizona feed yard, John Wayne's Red River, was going through a money drought in the cattle industry because cows were constantly getting sick, dying, and getting injured. One explanation for the problem was the slippery flooring and harsh environment that surrounded the dip vats on the ranch.
The dip vats are filled with water that was diluted with medicine. The cows would slide down a ramp and into the fluid to douse themselves in the remedy, which would prevent bugs and disease. So having a successful routine in the process of medicating the cows was necessary for a money-making market.
Due to the job of business, John Wayne's Red River employees shortly discovered Temple wanting her assistance to solve the conflict as soon as possible.
Temple's approach to her new layout of the dip vat was to utilize her visual thinking to see from the cattle's point of view. To do so, Temple got down on her knees and looked at and considered everything the cow would see and feel as they approached the equipment. As a result, Temple not only discovered that the ramp needed footing to give the cows traction, but also because cattle are prey by nature, they were being frightened by the sudden movement of objects and people, and the high contrast of light and dark, caused by extreme shadows.
With Temple's compromise to the design of the dip vats, her blueprints are now treasured by ranchers all around the country, and they have helped many ranchers who face the same problems as those at John Wayne's Red River, such as the company Cargill, which was the first meatpacking corporation to be inspired by Temple and hire her to make the corrections where necessary.
One major factor that went along with the cattle industry was slaughter, and having a rancher's cattle be cooperative in this process was extremely important. If any harm was done in the transporting of the cattle through walkways, which would result in swollen areas or injuries, ranchers would get tough meat, which was unsellable to consumers.
Because the walkways were straight with small windows, the cattle were able to see their environment ahead and around them. Due to this, they would often become scared and refuse to continue. However, this problem was frequently witnessed nationally. Therefore, Temple was quick to become aware of the conflict due to her prior knowledge. Thus, she created her own design which consisted of solid, curved walls. This way, the cattle wouldn't be able to see what was going on up ahead, which would help them remain calm.
Thanks to Temple's success with their compromised equipment, ranchers are now eager to part from their excruciatingly painful machinery and hear Temple's expertise to expand to more humane means and treatment. Most importantly, the United States Department of Agriculture decided to change the regulations and expectations for caring for livestock.
Another conflict in the cattle industry was the act of slaughtering.
When cattle would be slaughtered, they would not be restrained, causing them to panic and move, injuring themselves. Because of this, many ranchers would get tough meat from the inflamed, wounded areas, and the cows would suffer from a long, painful death.
Which Temple thoroughly expressed as not right by saying, "I think using animals for food is an ethical thing to do, but we've got to do it right. We've got to give them a painless death."
Standing by our comment, Temple created a center track restraining system. The center track was like a conveyor belt and worked like a return system. Cattle would be straddled on a track that would lift them by the stomach and propel them forward, while at the same time keep them steady and restrained for slaughter. The result of this was that the cattle were able to be stunned unconscious quickly and easily, enabling a swift and humane slaughter.
Temple continued her engineering and modifying livestock processes in the area of squeeze chutes.
At the time, squeeze chutes were used for vaccinations, but when the V-shaped iron gates would clasp onto the cows' bodies, their legs would often cross, causing bruises and minor injuries which were unnoticeable to the ranchers, but distressing and unpleasant to the cattle. Also, as cows would make their way into the squeeze chutes, they would often become excited or scared, which would cause less weight gain and tougher meat when it eventually came around to slaughter.
Temple's compromise to the conflict was that she saw from the cattle's point of view by looking at what they would see, and shortly discovered that a high contrast of light and dark were causing the intense behavior performed by the cows. Therefore, not only did Temple reconstruct the squeeze chutes so that the machines functioned to the cattle's liking and behavioral mannerisms, but also relocated the chutes to different parts on the ranches to avoid the color contrasting.
Countless times, Temple would have her blueprints ruined, which would show mockery and chastisement to her intelligence, and would be called sweetie or honey by male ranchers.
However, despite the ridicule, Temple fought and continued her battle to better the lives of livestock and educate ranchers by using her knowledge to uncover tiny, minor details hidden within ranches.
And I found that they were afraid of shadows. They were afraid of a reflection off the bumper of a truck. They were afraid of seeing people up ahead. And if you remove these visual-based details, then the cattle would walk right up the chute.
The small, innocent visual details Temple discovered were simple hidden things that the ordinary human eye and brain cannot quickly identify, such as shadows and reflections. But in a more precise manner, the details were also objects in chains swaying or hanging, slower constant movement of people and objects, high-pitched noises, sun changes in color or texture, and air blowing onto the animals' bodies.
These details are now noticed throughout many ranches nationally and internationally. They are considered tremendous help when trying to discover why livestock are acting strange or refusing to walk in certain alleyways.
Also, after Temple publicly published the mischievously hidden details, ranchers are now able to prevent balking factors from happening.
Temple has not only earned the respect she deserves from female ranchers and colleagues, but also men, such as Brett Ulrich, who first became acquaintances with Temple when she helped him discover a hole beside his chutes that were causing the cattle to balk.
I think agriculture judges people on what they stand for, not maybe what they say. Temple stands for the right stuff.
Once Temple's cattle industry career ended, she took on the role of teaching. She is now a professor of animal sciences at Colorado State University and often influences her students to fight for animal rights as well.
Because she was a hero to her students didn't know she had autism. She's a hero to the autism community. She's somebody who's eloquent, writes books, gives hope.
Temple Grandin identified a major conflict in the cattle industry between ranchers and inhumane treatment of livestock. She compromised this by recognizing that the human population will always eat meat, but she can at least make the conditions better for the animals out of respect. Stating it herself, she's a realist and not a scientist. And through it all, she was overloaded with hate, injustice, and prejudice for her autism and gender, but because of her autistic savant abilities, she was able to make a grand reputation throughout America and the world.